Welcome to the Southwest Pool and Spa Show Preview Podcast. I'm Pam Vinje, and today I'm interviewing one of our conference speakers, Steve Hood. Steve's a 45-year pool construction veteran and began by helping his father build gunite pools in Southeast Texas in the early 70s at the age of 12. He'll be discussing his session topic, pool wisdom, and education from 45 years of mistakes. So join us in this episode as Steve offers some really great advice with all of that wisdom he has to offer. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Pam. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you for doing this. It's so important to be able to have a guy like you that's been around for 45 years in the business and wanting to give back to young entrepreneurs just starting out in our industry. And I'm very grateful for you wanting to be that guy. So we're excited to hear, a little bit about your seminar. But let's start with a little bit about you first. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, when you say 45 years, it kind of blows my mind, but that's how long I was in the business because I'm not that old, but I started young. My dad was a pool builder in Victoria, Texas, down South Texas, where, 105 degrees in the summers. And he believed in working, and he would get me out of bed on Saturday mornings, even during the school year, in the summers every day. And I didn't have any hookup or privilege working for my dad. In fact, I probably had it worse than anybody. I was digging ditches and learning how to tie steel and mixing plaster, running the gunite rig, all those things. And so grew up doing it, and then moved to Austin around 82, 83. Worked for a builder there. Actually put a guy in the building business, and then moved to Dallas Fort Worth and had a pool company there for 5 years called Mid City Pools. And then came to Nashville to be a songwriter and did that for about 7 years till that fizzled out. Then got back into something that I knew how to do. And that was the pool business again. So we built gunite and high-end vinyl liner pools for about 25 years here. And I sold it a couple of years ago, and I still dabble in some renovations sometimes. So I learned a lot along the way, and most of those things that I learned weren't from schooling. They were from making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. That's where this seminar comes from.
Boy, that is how we learn, isn't it? We
Yeah.
learn from our mistakes. So
Yeah.
tell me, like one or two mistakes that was, common for pool builders and something that you actually experienced.
A lot of it just came from not being organized, just kind of winging it, seat of your pants sort of thing, which is how a lot of young entrepreneurs get into it. You just get a truck and some people working for you, and you get into it. And it takes time to put things together and get your ducks in a row. But I finally realized the more that I did that, the fewer mistakes happened. It took less time to get ready to do a job, all those things. And so getting organized, putting together infrastructure, I didn't even know what that word was when I started, but laying a foundation to work from is extremely helpful. And I'll be giving points about that and some tips on how to do that as we go. And another thing that I did when I was younger was I was in the hole too much. My dad always used to make the joke when people would ask him, how's the pool business? He'd always say, oh, it's in the hole. But we can use that now in that I started really becoming more successful when I got out of the hole and got into the business end of things, because it gave me more time to organize, to have relationships with the customers more often, and into selling more and marketing and things like that get you more business.
I agree. Just getting out of the day to day so that you could be the business guy to grow the
Yeah.
company. Yeah, it's hard to grow the company when you're, like you said, in the hole. building the pool. How about another one that you had mentioned to me prior was communication. What kind of stuff did you learn about with communication?
Well, when I started, we didn't have, if you wanted to make a phone call, you had to go to somebody's house or be in the office. We didn't have, these things. So these give us a huge advantage nowadays in that we can communicate just like that immediately, whether that's by a voice call or text or emails.
Another mistake that people make is they don't communicate enough. Maybe I'll just start with something like, or you can. Why don't you start with another mistake people make is
Well, a lot of times we get caught up in a lack of communication because we get so busy we forget to communicate, and that can be with your people as well as with customers. We have the advantage of now of having these things. And when I started, we didn't have these things. You had to go in somebody's house or the office to make a phone call. Now you can let somebody know something immediately. And that's very helpful when a mistake is made on a job. And usually the business owner is not always on these jobs. They're out doing the business. But it's important to let them know and let your guys know, train them to let you know immediately if there's a shortage of material, if something's been broken, if you need more plumbing, all those things are helpful to know right away so that they can be handled right away. It helps to do those things in a timely manner. And not only with the crews, the people, but to the customer needs to be in the loop. Because the number one I did a survey one time with customers, and we always did a exit survey after we completed a pool. And their
smart.
biggest gripe is not being communicated with, not knowing what's going on. How come nobody's been here for 4 days? And even if you have vehicle problems or whatever, as long as you let them know, they're usually fine with it.
Yeah,
Um, so it's really important to communicate not only with your people but with the customer.
love that. How do you create a culture of learning from mistakes? What would you do to facilitate something like that?
Yeah, it's one thing to make the mistakes and to move on, but it's another thing to learn from those. I just saw something from a very famous musician who's in a classic band that's one of those that's been together for 30 years, and they asked him about bad gigs. Did he, just hate bad gigs? And he said, actually, those are the most interesting and those are the things that I learned from. He said, if you have a great gig, it's just an ego stroke, really. You don't learn anything from it. If you have a bad gig, you learn something from that and that you can apply to the next one or the next 20. And it's the same in the business, in the pool business. So what I did is over time I formulated I'm a list guy. In fact, I'm old school. I use one of these things. Actually, ink, paper. I like that because it leaves it wide open. I can scribble whatever I want to. And I also use a phone. Phones have great apps and you don't have to pay for them. They're free. Notes on a Apple phone is a great tool. And you can actually make checklists for routine stuff that you do every day. And it's kind of exciting to check each thing off, if you're accomplishing something. But over time, as mistakes were made, we go, "Oh, we didn't measure for this or that. We didn't measure from the pool to the pad to make sure that we had enough plumbing on the job." So that became part of our checklist. And eventually, I think there were around 120 things on that checklist that our supervisor would go through each job and go down and mark things as done and a date maybe on something. And it was very helpful. It kept a lot of mistakes from happening again. And so that was applied after something went wrong to making something go right the next time.
Yeah, I love that. That's how we learn. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's huge. You created a whole standard operating procedure based off of,
Yeah.
learning from mistakes. It's
Yeah.
huge. One last thing before we wrap up. One last thing you want to say to young entrepreneurs starting out and why what the benefit would be to come to your seminar.
Just come with an open mind. And, when I was a young entrepreneur, just kind of starting out, I had worked for my dad for a long time. So I kind of thought I knew everything. And I learned pretty quick that it's impossible to know everything, no matter how much you study or learn from mistakes. You're always going to learn something. Even now, after 45 years, 65, I still learn something new every day. Every single day, I learn something new because the business is always changing. The people that you're dealing with are going to be different every time. So you'll learn things from them. So I would say just come to this seminar with an open mind and you might learn something. You never know. I think if you can do that, it might be worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Good seeing you.
You too. Thank you once again, Steve, for coming on to the show. Steve's class, Full Wisdom and Education from 45 Years of Mistakes, is perfect for new business owners. You don't want to miss this session. It's not every day that someone with this level of experience shares best practices with you, so you don't have to make the same mistakes he did. It'll be hosted on February 6th at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas. We hope to see you there.